Believe it or not, inside every one of those robots is a human. That's because each of these costumes were built by fans of the Transformers franchise. I'm here to tell you tonight that you can build a costume that looks really good if you have a plan and you keep it simple. I made it with a relatively small budget, less than $10. This costume right here, which I'm going to be referring to throughout the time I'm speaking. First of all, after I decided on the character I wanted to make, I had to figure out what pieces I was going to make and how I was going to wear it. I ended up deciding on building the costume based on the way I draw the Transformers. That is, I have a human figure, usually a very dark color to simulate all the little dark pieces that would be inside the character, and covered in the colored armor that goes on top and normally transforms into the outside of the vehicle. Now, I used the references mostly from the movies because my character is from the films, but I also had many high-resolution images of the 3D model, and the video game was completely and utterly the most useful thing I could have ever had because I could turn the camera in any direction I needed and basically see every piece in 3D. I narrowed down how many pieces I was going to make even further by deciding not to include pieces that would be too small that would break or which would get in the way. An example would be a piece on the upper arm of Blackout, or Grinder, the character I made, which would go on the forearm. It would be very thin and would probably have gotten caught on other pieces and broken really quick. Another piece was on the back of my arm, which would have been rectangular and probably would have gotten caught on my backpack and the part of my arm whenever I lifted it, and it would be difficult to maneuver in. I also had to collect materials after I knew what character I wanted to make. Luckily, we began moving shortly before I began building, so I had a lot of cardboard and styrofoam, packaging styrofoam, from the move, all the appliances and things that we bought. You can get cardboard if you visit Walmart or Sam's Club, because when they're restocking, all they do with the leftover cardboard is go in the back and bale it and then recycle it. They'll be happy to give it to you because they don't have any real need for it. Other materials that I had for this project were the clothing that I wore was all black. I owned all of it beforehand except for the gloves, which I bought for less than $10. And I also had to paint my white tennis shoes that I never wore anymore black so that they would fit better for the costume. After I had collected all my materials, I had to decide, because I had two different types of materials to make out of, whether I was going to build each piece out of cardboard or foam, because I had both. If it would be under a lot of stress, or if it had to be small, I would make it out of cardboard, and if it needed to be thicker and have mass, and more importantly be light, I made it out of styrofoam. After I had decided what I was going to make my pieces out of, I would then cut them out with a razor blade, a knife or scissors, and even a grinder and a belt sander for some of the larger pieces. After each piece was cut out, I would then paint it with my acrylic paints. I am an art student, so I didn't have to go out and buy any more of that. That would be a cost you might have to factor in. After each piece was painted the general color that it needed to be, I would then be able to glue it to the other pieces wherever it would go. If I had to wear the pieces on the clothing, if I was gluing it directly to the clothing and I had to wear it, I would take several pieces of paper and roll them up around my appendage, and this would not only insulate my arm from the heat of the hot glue, but it would also protect it in case the glue melded through the clothing and decided to stick. That protected my skin. After all of that was done, I also had to test all the pieces on the costume as I wore it to make sure that nothing was breaking when I just moved around in it normally. After I was pretty much finished with my costume, I went back and I painted details on it, which includes the name of the pilot on the side of the cockpit. Now, the last thing I did for my costume, because I really wanted to pull this off, was I've been practicing the character's voice. I can dress up as the character all I want, but if I still sound like a girl and I'm dressed up as a giant robot, it just doesn't come across as the right character.
So I've been practicing the voice of the character, so when I'm dressed up, I can be most convincing.
I do hope to wear this costume during Halloween this year, and maybe win a few contests. That would be awesome. Now, this is only one of the many ways to build a costume. There are so many materials that you can use and to build it out of and to adhere it with. Not only that, but also how you can wear your costume. Some costumes are even transformable. That is, they can turn from a vehicle into the robot. So I hope that I've proved with a small budget, I spent about $10 on mine, you can build a good looking costume if you keep it simple and you have a plan. Thank you very much.